47 new messages. I just kept running, faster and faster, until my muscles throbbed like an out-of-control dial tone, until the electricity in my legs subsided into sharp spasms of pain. I ran down the winding, semi-abandoned street until my lungs burned and my heart pumped pure sulfur. I might have screamed, or maybe my voice just sputtered into a metronomic hum. I don't know. I can't really remember. I ran until I just couldn't run anymore. By the time I stumbled into the back alley behind an abandoned strip mall, I couldn't even remember why I'd started running in the first place. Quite frankly, I couldn't remember anything. The few remaining memories of that morning felt fuzzy, distant. I could remember crawling out of bed with a throbbing migraine. I could vaguely recall showering, shaving. Hell, I could even remember the scorched menthol aftertaste of an early morning cigarette. But then, nothing. Everything after that became a blur of half-remembered sounds and images, a bottomless black chasm in my mind. I glanced at my wristwatch and almost gasped. 2:56 p.m., a 6-hour gap. My memories felt distant, ephemeral, lost in white noise of exhaustion. I kept trying to piece everything together, but just grew increasingly frustrated and confused. What the hell is going on? I braced myself against a grimy, cement-covered brick wall, trying to catch my breath, but I just couldn't take it anymore. My muscles became rubbery and unstable. I collapsed upon the hot asphalt, bending over in a fit of coughs, weaves, and dry heaves. The sun beat down on my back, and my head ached. The stink of garbage and taste of bile made it damn near unbearable. I felt terrible. Then, out of the corner of my eye, I saw something. A small, gray, rectangular object lying next to an upturned trash can. Spears of sunlight reflected off its surface and made it strangely over-illuminated, almost ethereal. For a second, I stared at it in a captivating silence. The lights off its surface bore into my eyes as I got up, wiped myself off, and went over to pick it up. It was a cell phone, one of those old flip phones, all scratched up and barely held together. As if in a trance, I bit down and picked it up. A weird, unnatural heat radiated between each scratch and ridge, as if they were all deep, infected wounds. The cell phone felt half broken and fragile, but seemed to momentarily bind itself to my flesh, as if it was a part of me, as if it had always been a part of me. The front screen displayed a single ominous message. 47 new messages. I don't know why, but I became unbearably curious. Why would an out-of-date cell phone tossed aside with the early evening trash have so many voicemail messages? Why had it been abandoned? And why did I feel this strange compulsion to keep it? Hell, to treasure it like some lost artifact. Even then, I seemed to subconsciously know that this old flip phone was somehow connected to my 6-hour gap in my memories. I felt like some invisible force had led me here. God damn it. I just couldn't help myself. I opened up the phone, dialed *86, and listened to the voicemail. Oh God. If only I'd known. If only I weren't so curious. If only I could have broken the goddamn trance, snapped that phone in half and thrown it away. But I didn't. And this is what I heard.
First, new message.
A loud, throaty scream, frantic and full of terror. A cacophony of cries mixed with the gurgle of spit, blood, and bile. The faint trace of a whimper near the end. The voice sounded tiny, lo-fi, and almost distorted, and yet it also sounded oddly familiar, like it had belonged to an old acquaintance I hadn't heard from in years.
Second, new message.
The same voice, only now the screams were muffled and intermittently punctuated with terse, terrified sobs. The sickening crack of bone, snapped in half and breaking through soft, supple flesh. An explosion of panicked screams, and the stomach-churning sound of a body being ripped apart.
Third, new message.
Swift staccato burst of sobs, The sudden squelch of flesh grasped and torn apart as if it was a flimsy sheet of cellophane. A metronomic hammering sound that steadied into a sickening pulse. Distortion, static, human pain. The constant thud grew louder and louder. Everything, shrouded in an unbearable electronic hiss.
Fourth, new message.
The crackle of static, the breaking of bone. The same broken voice fading into a strained choke whisper rasping in my ear. A sad, sickening series of sobs in a single plea.
Don't let this thing take me. Please. Don't listen.
A shriek of static. Dead silence. I wish I could tell you that I listened to all 47 messages, that I stood there and listened until I had discerned from these disturbing, disconnected recordings some sort of cohesive narrative. But I'm a coward, and I couldn't take it anymore. I slammed the phone shut before I could get any further. A cold, nauseating numbness went through my body, and the air grew stale, poisoned. I felt like I was going to throw up. Someone whose still familiar voice reverberating in my ears, that had been torn apart, eviscerated. Was this the source of my memory loss? Did I experience some trauma connected with these messages? Oh God, did I watch a man die? Or did I do something? Something I wanted to forget? Panicked, I tried to find some rational explanation for the horrible collective of messages. Hell, I tried to figure out some sort of way that this might have been some sort of sick practical joke, but even then, I knew that this was real, that I couldn't just close my eyes and walk away. I opened up the phone and looked through all the incoming calls, and as I suspected, all 47 of the missing calls came from the same number. As far as I could tell, those were the only incoming calls this phone had ever received. It almost felt like this phone had been designed solely for the purpose of conveying to me this strange and perverse series of messages. I took a deep breath. With shaking hands, I pulled up the number and pressed send. The phone rang in my ears as I waited for someone to pick up. My pulse quickened into a white-hot frenzy. My palms were slicked with sweat. The surrounding shadows grew into a inky black veil that momentarily shrouded every corner of the abandoned alleyway. 3 rings, then a 4th, and then a familiar clicking sound. But before I could say anything, a harsh, rumbling voice bursted out.
A ghost of signal, lost in the geography of flesh and silence. Forgotten. A ghost.
A wave of distortion. Forgotten words cocooned into white noise. An unbroken stream of language. The voice sounded lost, blanketed in a harsh crackle of electricity. But like the sound from those 47 messages, it too sounded oddly familiar. I tried to listen carefully to figure out who it was, but the static crackled and hissed like thunder, frustrating this attempt.
The circuitry of desire, an electromagnetic warmth of flesh. Desire.
Hello, I whispered. I still couldn't identify the voice. Can you hear me? But the voice croaked on, becoming more and more familiar as the static gradually subsided. I tried to listen closely.
The desire of automation, the desire for this broken machine of blood and bone, this prison of communication. It has been far too long.
I found this phone and wanted to talk.
It is happening again. It is happening again. I will soon perhaps. One more time.
Who is this? Do you know who this phone belongs to?
A prison antenna, a satellite signal. But it is happening again. It will be soon, perhaps. You know this.
I'm sorry, I don't understand.
Don't worry. You will. You will.
At that moment, I knew that the sudden sinking realization who I had been speaking with. Beneath the blanket of white noise, the voice became familiar. It was the same voice that had screamed and stammered for mercy in those voice messages. The same voice that had grown hoarse during its final plaintive sobs. It was the voice of the tortured and the torturer. The broken victim and the babbling madman. But it was also a voice I'd heard all my life. It was my voice. They were all my voice. This thing was speaking to me, now with my voice. And then I felt the pain, a thunderous jolt of electricity, the sensation of bones crackling, tendons snapping, flesh ripping open into jagged red ribbons, and a slow trickle of blood and viscera seeping into my eyes. I could hear the horrible sounds of my body breaking into 1,000 pieces. I felt violated, carved open, emptied out little by little, the cracks and scars infiltrated by a miasmic electromagnetic fog. I couldn't tell if this pain was real or imagined, and I don't care. My knees buckled, and I howled in pain. I screamed. I screamed until I couldn't scream anymore. In a fit of desperation, I violently tossed the phone into the hot asphalt, and the pain abruptly stopped. I became frantic, confused, scared, and I desperately wanted to get the hell out of there, so I ran. I just kept running, faster and faster, until my muscles throbbed like an out-of-control dial tone, until the electricity in the legs subsided into sharp spasms of pain. I ran down the winding, semi-abandoned street until my lungs burned and my heart pumped pure sulfur. I might have screamed, or maybe my voice just sputtered into a metronomic hum. I don't know. I can't remember. I just ran until I couldn't run anymore. By the time I stumbled into the back alley behind an abandoned strip mall, I couldn't even remember why I'd started running in the first place. Quite frankly, I couldn't remember anything. No, that's not true. There was an echo of a memory, the dull sensation of déjà vu lingering like a ghost. The past receded into a dull ache, a tangled collage of sound and image shrouded in the fog of static. I glanced at my wristwatch. 3:22 p.m. Almost 7 hours. I braced myself against a grimy, cement-covered brick wall, trying to catch my breath. I clutched my chest and broke into a violent coughing fit. I felt confused. Broken shards of memory cut microscopic incisions in my brain. Then, out of the corner of my eye, I saw something. A small gray rectangular object lying next to an upturned trash can. It radiated a weird spectral glow in the shadows of the alleyway. It too seemed oddly familiar. The half-forgotten memories became less faint, less impressionistic. But still, I couldn't help myself. As if in a trance, I bent down and picked it up. A weird unnatural heat radiated between each scratch and ridge as if it was all deep infected wounds. The cell phone felt half broken and fragile, but seemed to momentarily bind itself to my flesh, as if it were part of me, as if it had always been a part of me. The front screen displayed a single ominous message. 48 new messages. That concludes this week's session at the Nightmare Lab. If you enjoyed this episode, click the like button and comment below. If you have your own twisted tale that you'd like narrated on our channel, submit it through the form in the description. Become a part of our sinister collective by subscribing. Be here next week for another concoction to feed the nightmare.